So well, you start off with American values over autocracy. So let's talk about that. Christopher Wray stepped down today in what I think a lot of people would describe as complying in advance to an incoming autocrat. He could have stayed and tried to fight to stay through his 2027 term. What message does that send to Democrats who are willing and trying to fight for, and, you know, normal Republicans that want to fight for democracy?
Well, he could have stayed and fought, and so there is some disappointment on the Hill. But I do have great respect for Christopher Wray and haven't always agreed with him, but I think he's been a principled FBI director and stood up against, far-right extremism as best he could repeatedly, including against the former president who nominated him at different times, always tried to defend the FBI as an institution. That said, I think that these classic American values, right, and this notion of the rule of law and the Constitution and the fact that we are not a nation based on the rule of man is going to have to drive all of us as we move forward into this incoming administration. And I expect that that's certainly something that we're prepared to do as House Democrats.
One of the sort of core values of America has been the welcoming of immigrants, right? It is written on the Statue of Liberty. What you're now seeing is the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, saying that on day one, they're going to allow ICE to enter things like churches, mosques, funerals. There are religious organizations that are pushing back on that and saying you're just violating the sanctity of the church. Schools, being able to, stop immigrants in front of a preschool. How is that going to be defended, or how can that be defended by Democrats?
Schools, hospitals, churches, synagogues, mosques should all be off limits. And I think that if the new administration were to go down this road, you'll see a massive backlash from the American people. Listen, we have a broken immigration system. We have to reform the asylum system. It is overwhelmed and overloaded at this particular point in time. We need a strong, a safe and secure border. And we should try to figure out how we can come together as Democrats and Republicans to enact comprehensive immigration reform and make sure that we are continuing the promise of America as a nation of immigrants, but also as a nation anchored in the rule of law and secure the border.
Is it realistic to even think about doing some kind of legislation with the Republican Party, which is now a MAGA party, and they want immigrants out? They want the mass deported. They're not going to cooperate with Democrats on a bill.
Well, I think the American people have consistently made clear that while we understand the need, and it is appropriate to make sure that violent felons who are presenting a risk of harm to everyday Americans and who are here unlawfully should no longer be here. While at the same period of time, we should be focused, of course, on those violent felons and not families. And I think public sentiment is going to be critical. Abraham Lincoln often said, with it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. And though we won't have the gavels, we will have the ability to help shape public sentiment and make sure that the American people push back against far-right overreach if it occurs from the incoming administration or extreme MAGA Republicans in the House.
And not even just in the House. Donald Trump has appointed two essentially billionaire bureaucrats, one near billionaire, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, to head what essentially is a blue ribbon commission. It's not an agency. It's not part of the federal government. But they're going to be making recommendations to slash things that could include veterans' benefits, Head Start, things that are scheduled to expire. They could be deregulating their own industries, giving themselves deregulation and tax cuts. What is the plan to resist that?
Well, this is an area where we are prepared to aggressively push back. And we've made clear, listen, we will find bipartisan common ground with the incoming administration on any issue when it will make a difference in the lives of the American people, particularly as it relates to driving down the high cost of living in the United States of America. That's a clear message that has emerged from this election. But at the same period of time, we're going to push back against far-right extremism, protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid, protect the Affordable Care Act, protect Head Start, protect efforts to undermine veterans' benefits, and we will always protect the woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions.
To do that, you are going to need to find a couple of Republicans who are willing to come and vote with you, right? It's a very narrow majority, but it's still a majority. So are you recommending, by the way, your members to join the House equivalent of this committee that they want to create? It's not really a real committee. But
well, we'll have that internal discussion.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, the person charged with executing this vision is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Are you kidding me? This is not a serious effort. When you put Marjorie Taylor Greene in charge, it speaks for itself.
Yeah. indeed. Let's talk about the incoming House minority. It contains the largest Congressional Black Caucus in history, more than 60 members, which is a big deal. And so you're going to have a much more diverse caucus at the same time that you're having this massive push against diversity itself. What is the significance in your mind of that?
Well, we just celebrated the 100th anniversary of what would have been Shirley Chisholm's birthday on November 30th. She would have turned 100. And, you know, it's interesting to me that Shirley Chisholm was elected, of course, in what was otherwise a tough year, right? 1968. Richard Nixon wins the presidential election. Same year, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. RFK was assassinated. It's a reminder that even in the midst of a storm, positive things develop.
Yeah.
Now, when Shirley Chisholm was the first African-American woman in the Congress and the Congressional Black Caucus was founded just a few years later, there were 12 men and 1 woman, Shirley Chisholm. Now, there are going to be 60 members currently in the Congressional Black Caucus, 31 black women, all standing on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm. And so I think the House looks like America, feels like America, has the life experiences of America on the Democratic side, and that's a wonderful thing.
Do you think that that same idea should be applied to the Democratic National Committee, which does not seem to be considering any black women to run it, even though black women voted 92% for Kamala Harris?
Well, you know, I certainly expect that black women are going to play a prominent role in shaping the future of the DNC, and so stay tuned.
What about one of the members of the CBC, James Clyburn, very august member, clearly. He suggested that one of the things that maybe Joe Biden should do is pardon Donald Trump. What do you think of that?
Well, listen, my view is in terms of the pardon discussion, and I stand on the shoulders of Jim Clyburn, and so we've got nothing but the greatest degree of respect of Jim, and I haven't talked to him about his thinking in this area, but do look forward to getting his point of view. But my view has been, listen, you've got a lot of low-income Americans of every race, but disproportionately African Americans and Latinos who've been overrun by the criminal justice system, particularly nonviolent offenders who were caught up in the failed war on drugs. And to the extent that we are moving forward with massive criminal justice reform, at least over the next few weeks in terms of what should be done using the pardon power, that's where the focus should be.
And in addition to that, I mean, you also have arguably political prosecutions, people like Marilyn Mosby, who are, you know, also looking for pardons. Should President Biden go big in terms of pardons? There's that. There's also people sitting on death row. Donald Trump is a big advocate of using the death penalty and would probably use it very excessively if he got back in and ramp it back up again. Should President Biden be more aggressive about thinking about pardoning more people?
President Biden has to evaluate these things on a case-by-case basis, but at the same time, go as big as possible, including looking at examples of aggressive prosecutions as it relates to people like Marilyn Mosby.
The next year, there's a continuing resolution to fund the government. This is an annual thing where we have to decide whether Republicans are going to try to shut the government down. What is the status of getting a continuing resolution done? It would only take us through March. There was just the House did pass a defense authorization bill, so that's done for now. What are the chances the government shuts down next March? And would you provide the votes to keep it open if they want to do things like end DACA or something like that?
House Republicans, the incoming president, Senate Republicans should not count on us to bail them out unless there is a responsible spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, our national security, and the economic well-being of the American people. There is no big, massive mandate to jam far-right extremism and right-wing policies down the throats of the American people. Let's be clear. To the extent there is a mandate, it's for us to all work together and bring the American dream to life for everyday Americans all across the country. And to the extent they're interested in advancing that project, they'll find cooperative Democrats. To the extent that they are trying to jam these far-right policies down the throats of the American people, they're going to have to do it on their own, which we know they are incapable of doing.